The train screeched to a stop under the dying sun, steam hissing like a sigh of regret. Clara Wells clutched her small suitcase, trembling. She had traveled 3 days from St. Louis to this far-off desert town to marry a man she'd never met, a mail-order husband who needed a wife more than love. Her legs froze on the iron step of the carriage. She couldn't make herself descend. The dust, the silence, and the fear of rejection pinned her in place. She wasn't supposed to feel this scared. Back home, she'd told herself this was destiny, a new start after years of being unseen. But as she looked out and saw the rough men in white hats, the horses stamping in the dirt, she realized she didn't belong here. Her lace gloves suddenly felt foolish, her city shoes too fragile for the West. She wanted to turn back, but there was nowhere to go. Then she saw him. Tall, broad-shouldered, his hat shadowing eyes that looked like storm clouds about to break. Eli Carter, the man who'd written her 3 letters and no more. He didn't smile when he saw her. Didn't wave. Just stared like a man sizing up a storm he didn't ask for. Her heart pounded. Was that disappointment in his eyes, or pain? The station master called her name, and heads turned. Clara's throat tightened. Everyone was watching. The mail-order bride who couldn't step down. Her knees shook as the metal stairs burned under her shoes. The wind tugged at her hat ribbon, whispering, "Run." But before she could decide, a strong hand rose through the dust. Eli's hand. Silent, steady, waiting. The moment their palms met, the world stilled. His hand was rough, warm, grounding, like the first rain after a long drought. She looked up, and something in his eyes softened. "You're late," he said quietly, but there was no anger, only exhaustion, maybe loneliness. Clara found her voice trembling. The train broke down, twice. He nodded once, then helped her down like she was made of glass. The crowd dispersed. Eli led her to a wagon hitched with 2 chestnut horses. The road stretched endlessly toward the horizon, painted gold by evening light. They rode in silence for miles. Clara kept stealing glances, trying to read him. He was handsome in that rough western way, sunburnt skin, jaw tight from years of hard work. But his eyes were tired, as if he'd already buried too much. When they reached his ranch, she understood why he needed a wife. The place looked half forgotten, fences broken, shutters hanging loose, land thirsty for rain. He helped her down again, but this time, he didn't offer his hand. "House is yours now," he muttered. "You'll find water out back." Then he disappeared into the barn without another word. Inside, the cabin smelled of pine and smoke. A single picture hung by the hearth. A woman with dark hair and kind eyes, smiling beside a younger Eli. Clara's stomach twisted. She wasn't his first, maybe not even his second. She traced the dust-covered frame with her finger and whispered, "Who are you replacing, Clara?" The fire cracked softly, but no answer came. That night, she couldn't sleep. The wind howled outside, brushing against the windows like ghostly fingers. She heard footsteps pacing the porch, Eli's heavy boots. He was keeping watch, though she didn't know if it was for coyotes or memories. She wanted to speak, to thank him for his hand, for catching her before she fell, but fear held her tongue. In the morning, she found him in the corral, breaking a wild horse with terrifying grace. The animal kicked, reared, fought, but he didn't flinch. Dust rose like smoke, sun blazing off his hat brim. When he finally calmed the horse, he turned to find her watching. For the first time, he smiled, barely. "You planning to stand there all day, Mrs. Carter?" he said. Her heart stumbled at the sound of her new name. Days passed in quiet rhythm. Clara learned to carry buckets, mend shirts, and cook by firelight. Each dawn, Eli was already in the fields, shirt damp with sweat, his silence thick as smoke. Yet every evening, he left a lantern burning by her window. She didn't know why that small act mattered, but when she saw its light flicker through the dark, she felt less like a stranger. One morning, while hanging laundry, Clara found a child's wooden toy buried in the dirt near the porch. A small carved horse, broken at the leg. She turned to see Eli watching her from the fence. "It was my boy's," he said, voice rough. "He's gone. Fever took him, and her." His eyes glistened under the brim of his hat. That's why he'd written those letters, not for love, but for company in the ruins of his life. That night, The silence between them wasn't cold anymore, it was shared grief. Clara wanted to say she understood loss too, that she'd buried her own dreams back in Missouri. But instead, she set a cup of coffee beside him and whispered, "No one truly replaces those we love. We just learn to breathe beside their ghosts." He didn't answer, but his hand brushed hers for a heartbeat before pulling away. The following week brought rain, the first in months. Eli worked in the downpour, repairing fences like a man trying to rebuild his life with every nail. Clara ran to him with a coat, shouting above the storm, but he only laughed, a sound deep and warm. For the first time, she saw him alive, not haunted. When lightning cracked nearby, he reached for her arm to steady her, and their eyes met beneath the storm's roar. Something changed that night. He invited her to supper, cooked by his own hands. The stew was terrible, but she smiled through every bite. "I forgot how to talk to someone," he confessed softly. "You're doing fine," she said, laughter breaking through the years of pain that separated them. They stayed up late, the rain whispering against the roof like music. The next morning, Clara woke to the scent of coffee and sunlight. Eli had left flowers, wild daisies, in a tin cup by her window. She pressed them to her chest, tears warming her cheeks. Maybe she hadn't been brought here to heal him. Maybe she was here to find her own peace. Weeks turned to months. Together they rebuilt the ranch. New fences, new paint, even laughter. Clara rode horses with him, her skirts catching the wind like wings. She found herself humming again, the same song she'd once sung to silence loneliness. Eli watched her, quiet pride glowing in his eyes. "You fit here," he said one evening. "Like the land's been waiting for you." But peace in the west never lasted long. One night, a storm of fire rolled across the hills, lightning had struck the dry grass. Flames raced toward the barn where the horses were trapped. Eli ran straight into the inferno. Clara screamed his name and followed without thinking, clutching her skirts as smoke choked the air. Inside the barn, heat scorched her lungs. She found Eli pulling ropes free, driving the terrified animals out. A burning beam cracked above him. Without warning, she threw herself forward, shoving him aside as the timber crashed down, pinning her leg. "Clara," he shouted, voice breaking. She coughed, gripping his arm. "Don't you dare leave them." He lifted the beam with a roar of strength she didn't think human. When they stumbled out, the barn collapsed behind them, sparks raining like dying stars. He carried her to safety, his arms trembling. "You fool," he whispered, tears streaking through the soot. "You could have died." She smiled weakly. "So could you." For hours they sat under the dark sky, the fire dying behind them. Her head rested against his shoulder. The world smelled of ash and rain. "You saved my horses," he said quietly. "You saved me," she answered. The words hung in the air, raw and true. He turned toward her then, his hand lifting her chin. "Clara Wells Carter," he said, voice steady, "don't ever step away from me again." Their lips met beneath the rising dawn, gentle, certain, like two lost souls finally finding home. Around them, the land smoked and shimmered with rebirth. When they pulled apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. "Guess I needed more than a wife," he murmured. "I needed hope," she smiled, "and you gave me the courage to step down." Months later, the ranch bloomed with new life. Crops thrived, foals were born, laughter filled the house again. Travelers passing through spoke of the Carter Ranch, where the cowboy and his mail-order bride turned sorrow into gold. Clara kept the broken wooden horse on the mantel, mended now, its leg glued strong. Each evening, Eli still lit the lantern by her window. Not out of loneliness anymore, but love, a promise that no darkness would ever take her light again. Clara would sit beside him on the porch, fingers entwined, watching the sky burn with colors of peace. One day, a letter arrived from Missouri, an old friend asking if she was happy. She read it aloud to Eli, laughing softly. "What should I say?" He smiled. "Tell her the truth." So she wrote, "I came here to be someone's wife. But I stayed because I found where I belonged." The seasons changed, but their bond deepened. Whenever she doubted herself, Eli would take her hand, just like that first day at the station, and say, "You don't have to stand alone anymore." Those words healed more than her fear, they stitched her heart to his. The land around them prospered. The old wounds faded into stories told by firelight. Sometimes, when the wind swept across the plains, Clara would imagine the sound of that train again, the one that carried her into a life she never planned, but always needed. And every time she felt lost, she'd remember the moment she couldn't step down, until a cowboy reached out his hand. That single touch had rewritten both their fates, turning strangers into soulmates. Love, she realized, wasn't something written in letters, it was found in the courage to take that one step forward, into someone's waiting hand.